Vermont's at-large congressman, and before that, the mayor of Burlington in Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Maybe I'm supposed to still be talking. There we go. All right. Senator Sanders. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Iowa Farmers Union, for all that you are doing in tackling one of the great crises facing this country, a crisis that we don't talk enough about. And it's not only the decline of family-based agriculture in America, it is the decline of rural America. I live in one of the most rural states in this country. I used to be the mayor of our big city, 40,000 people. That was it, biggest city in the state. Most of our people live in towns of 1,000 or less, 2,000 or less. I believe in the rural way of life. It is a good way of life. It is a good place to raise our children. And we together have got to do everything that we can to rebuild rural America, because what's going on now is just not acceptable. And when we talk about the decline of rural America, we are talking about the decline of family farms, and I don't have to tell you, it's true in Vermont. It's one of the saddest things that goes on in my state. It's going on in your state. People whose families have owned farms generation after generation, sometimes going back to the Revolutionary War, are now being forced off of the land because the prices that they are getting for their commodities are nowhere near the cost of production. So, let me tell you this. Let me make a promise to you. I try not to make too many promises on the campaign trail, but here is one promise I make to you. My Secretary of Agriculture will come from the ranks of family-based agriculture, not from corporate business. And that Secretary and our entire administration will be dedicated to rebuilding rural America and bringing young people into family-based agriculture and making sure that family farmers get the prices they need in order to live a good life. In my view, we can no longer tolerate farm bankruptcies in the Midwest being at their highest level in a decade, while the CEO who controls Smithfield Foods got a $291 million compensation package in 2017. Agribusiness prospers, family farmers get driven off of the land, and in some cases, farmers are doing terrible things because of the agony that they are going through. We can no longer tolerate the top 10% of farms in this country, the biggest farms, receiving 77% of all government subsidies. We're going to turn that around. We're going to use federal resources to protect family farms, not agribusiness or factory farms. We cannot continue to allow just 4 large companies to control 82% of the beef packing industry, 85% of soybean processing, 63% of pork packing, and 53% of chicken processing. We're going to have an attorney general in this country who understands antitrust law. In too many rural communities, there is only one buyer of crops. You know that better than I. which means food producers are at their mercy. They must use one corporation's feed and livestock. They must accept one corporation's costs, and they must accept one corporation's lower and lower payment rates. Today, and again, you know this better than I do because you're living with this reality, for every dollar Americans spend on food, farmers earn less than 15 cents, which is the smallest share in the modern history of our nation. And I can tell you, as a former mayor and a congressman and a senator, that the American people appreciate the hard work that family farmers do. They want family farmers to earn living incomes, not 15 cents on the dollar that consumers spend. And we're going to change that ratio around. We need a Secretary of Agriculture who understands that we need more family farms, not more factory farms in the United States. We need an Attorney General who will not only impose a moratorium on new agribusiness mergers, but will break up agribusiness monopolies that are devastating family farmers in Iowa, Vermont, and all over rural America. And when we talk about the need to ensure a fair price for family farmers, we are talking about the need for parity, price floors, to ensure farmers earn the cost of production plus living expenses. That is not a radical idea. We need to enact supply management programs and reestablish the grain reserve to prevent shortages and surpluses, to ensure farmers earn a decent income, and to ensure consumers receive a high-quality, stable, and secure supply of the food they depend upon. And when we talk about the crises facing the United States and the world, we cannot for one moment continue to ignore the existential threat that climate change brings to all of our people, and especially to agriculture. This year alone, record flooding in Iowa and overly wet conditions from climate change all over the country meant that over 19 million acres of land were left unplanted in the United States. 19 million acres of land. Unless we get our act together, corn yields right here in Iowa are projected to go down 25% over the next 30 years as a result of intense heat waves, heavy rainfall, and droughts that have been exacerbated by climate change. What is so disturbing about this issue, and I want all of you to appreciate this, because the more I read about it, the more troubled I become. What the scientists are now telling us is that they have underestimated the degree and severity and extent of the damage that climate change is doing right now in our own country and around the world. We have a major crisis, and any politician who comes before you and tells you, well, I don't know if climate change is real, I don't know if climate change is man-made. That ignorance, that rejection of science is literally threatening the well-being of our children and future generations. We have a crisis on our hands. We've got to respond to that crisis, and family farmers and agriculture in general can and must play an important role. But this is literally an existential threat, not only to our country, but to the world, something I feel very strongly about. And together with agriculture and family-based agriculture, it is an issue that we will address. Thank you so much.
Senator, thank you. The average age of farmers in the United States is about 60 years old. There are young people who want to farm, who are anxious to farm, who have devoted their life to farming, but they are facing serious barriers. And two of them are access to land and student loan debt. How would you work to lessen these barriers for beginning farmers?
Absolutely true that the average age of farmers is going up and up. And young people don't want to go into farming because they're forced to work 7 days a week. It is a hard job, and it's okay to do a hard job if you can make an adequate living. But to do a hard job and go deeper into debt makes sense to nobody, including the young people of our country. So what we have to do is several things. To answer the second part of your question, first, it is my view, absolutely, not only for farmers, but for the entire country. We must make public colleges and universities tuition free, and we must cancel student debt in this country, all student debt. And people say that's a radical idea. It ain't a radical idea. We do it by imposing a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. All of you know that back in 2008, 2009, we bailed out the crooks on Wall Street who nearly destroyed the entire economy. I think a modest tax on Wall Street speculation to eliminate all student debt and to make public colleges and universities tuition free is exactly the right thing to do, whether Wall Street likes it or not. Second of all, if we are serious about growing, undoing the damage that rural America is now facing, we have got to bring young people into agriculture. And the way that we do that is not only making public colleges and universities tuition free, but making sure that they have a decent income. And that is why parity, making sure that farmers are earning money, making sure that we have a government that stands up for family-based agriculture, not just factory farms, will in fact bring young people back into family-based agriculture. This is an issue that for the future of rural America we must resolve, and I intend to do that. Last point I would make on that one, and that is, I happen to believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege, and that is why we need a Medicare for All single-payer program which will benefit the entire country, but I think disproportionately help family farmers, many of whom are struggling with the high cost of health care. That's another way we bring young people into the agriculture.
Senator, you talked very forcefully about the need to contain the existential threat of climate change. Talk to us about how that needs to happen. What programs do you put in place? What metrics do you use? How do you wrestle this thing, and how do we lead the world?
The first point that I want to make is I am trying to do my best to listen to the scientists. So what I'm telling you is not something that I thought up in the middle of the night. In fact, I failed physics when I was in college. So this is not me talking. I'm trying to reflect what the best minds in the world are telling us. And this is what they are telling us. What they are telling us, and this is what the word existential threat means, is we don't have decades. We literally do not have decades. We have got to envisage climate change as it was an attack on the United States. If some foreign country attacked us today, president would be on television talking about how we're going to respond. That is what we need today. We need to respond to the threat of climate change in an incredibly aggressive way. And I'm proud to tell you that I have introduced the most comprehensive climate change plan that has ever been introduced by any candidate running for federal office. And all that plan is about, is listening to the scientists who tell us we don't have decades, we've got to move now. So what do we have to do? The very first thing that we have to do is recognize the severity of the problem, the major crisis that we face. Second thing we have to do is to tell the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet and the lives of our kids and future generations. You know, I remember, and some of you may remember, famous picture, one of the most famous pictures ever taken in Congress. The tobacco industry, all the CEOs of the tobacco industry stood up before a congressional committee. Henry Waxman of California chaired it. And they raised their right hands to swear, tell the truth. And the question they were asked back then was, does cigarette smoking cause health care problems? And their response was, no, we have no evidence that it does. They lied under oath. They lied. And today the fossil fuel industry is lying. When they tell you that we're not sure if it's man-made, or we don't know exactly, that is a lie. They have known for decades that fossil fuels and carbon emissions are causing climate change. And millions and hundreds of millions of people all over the world are going to pay the price. So we got to take them on. What do? Our goal is to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. That means here in Iowa, you are one of the leaders in this country in terms of wind energy, and I applaud you for that. You get about a third of your electricity from wind. Farmers are making decent money from having wind turbines on their property. We have got to multiply that many, many, many times over. We have to invest very heavily in solar energy, in geothermal, all of the new technologies that are out there. We have older buildings in Vermont, and I know in Iowa, that need to be retrofitted because you're wasting enormous amounts of energy. We can create millions of jobs, creating the insulation, building the insulation and the windows and the roofing here in the United States to make our homes and buildings more energy efficient. We need a new transportation system moving away from fossil fuel to the electrification of transportation. We also need to understand, as all of you do, this is not an American issue. I wish I could tell you we could solve this alone in America. What makes this issue even more complicated, we can't solve it alone. We need to get Russia and China and India and Pakistan and all of the countries in the world involved in this. So here is my dream, and it may seem like a visionary dream. Maybe it's impractical, I don't know. But my hope is that as the severity of the crisis becomes more apparent, and it is, you're seeing the forest fires in California, you're seeing Australia, unprecedented forest fires, heat waves in Europe, fishing industry all over the world suffering because fish are moving north away from where they are to go into colder water. You're seeing farmers not producing what they should because their fields are in mud. If the people of the world stand up, maybe, just maybe, we can create a situation where instead of spending $1.8 trillion every year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we can pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. That would be my vision.
In Iowa, we estimate that of only 10 to 15% of the food eaten by Iowans is actually raised here in Iowa. Now, there have been some great strides made in Iowa and in Vermont in the local and regional food movement. And we know that there are proven benefits to that.
Absolutely.
What federally can we do to create tangible and real connections between farmers and consumers that lead to farmer opportunities and healthy communities and real benefits for our kids?
Well, for a start, that's a great question, and you're right. In Vermont, we have worked very hard on that with some success. First of all, we need to make sure that we have a serious effort in labeling products regarding country of origin. I think everything being equal, people in this country would like to know that their food is being produced in this country. So we need that labeling, we need that to be enforced, and we don't need anyone cheating on that. Second of all, we are all concerned in this country about an epidemic of obesity and diabetes that goes with us. Parents all over this country are worried about the quality of food that their kids are eating. I see, and we're doing some of this in Vermont, what we call food farms to schools, where we have direct links between our schools and the school lunch program. Some of them are really great. We have really creative cooks using local food products. We have our largest hospital in the state. To the best of my knowledge, gets almost all of their food from local farms, and it is very high quality food. Food is so good that people who are not in the hospital actually come to the cafeteria there, that's true, to get the food. All right, so I think people want fresh food. They want fresh food, and they want to know who the people are who are producing that food, and if those people are their neighbors, that is an extraordinary thing. So I think, and when you talk about climate change, we don't need to be shipping poultry from China or wherever the hell it is into the United States. That's a huge expense. To the greatest degree possible, we should be producing food locally and taking advantage of that situation.
You mentioned China, and we have a number of questions around the issue of trade and what this administration has done to our reputation around the world. And we'd like to know what you might do to restore that reputation and what your policies might be relative to our trading environment around the world.
Good. I believe, and I think every sensible person believes in trade. Trade is a good thing, but it has to be based on principles of fair trade and not just unfettered trade. And what it has to be is policy developed by the stakeholders, the people who are impacted most by that policy, not by CEOs writing trade agreements behind closed doors, which has been the history of trade agreements in this country. And when we talk about trade policy, it can't be made by a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning, all right? And it can't be made arbitrarily, which is, I think, what you're referring to in terms of damaging our reputation, not only on trade, but in terms of our reputation with historic allies throughout the world. So I want farmers in this country to be able to have good markets abroad. I want them involved in that discussion. I do not want to see us in a position where cheap food, perhaps unhealthy food, is coming flooding into this country. So to answer your question, I voted against PNTR with China for a variety of reasons. I voted against NAFTA for a variety of reasons. And I will work as President of the United States to establish trade agreements that work for workers, that work for family-based agriculture, and not just the CEOs of large corporations.
Oh, one subject we haven't touched on yet, Senator, is the ethanol situation. Our current president promised to be the best friend of ethanol.
And let me guess, he didn't quite tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Shock of all shocks.
Where do we go from here?
Look, if we are serious about combating climate change, we need to move to sustainable energy. We need to move to wind, we need to move to solar, we need to move to biofuels. So we need research and development to make sure that we are producing in the most effective way possible the biofuels that will help this country. We don't need to exempt large corporations from biofuels. We need to protect family farms. We need to do a lot of research in cellulosic, alcohol, and so forth. But I look forward to working with you on that issue.
Well, thank you. That concludes our questions, but we'd love it if you would like to summarize and conclude your remarks for this evening.
I know you have had a long day. As a United States Senator who is sometimes trapped on the floor listening to my colleagues speak, I do appreciate the pain that you have been going through today. Congratulations, you have survived. I understand nobody is following me. This is it. So you've made it. Congratulations. Let me just say this. This country today faces monumental challenges. And one of them, which is absolutely true for agriculture, but it's true for the whole economy, is that more and more we are moving toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires and large corporations control not only our economic life and our political life. That is true in almost every sector of our society. The rich are getting richer, Middle class is struggling. People work longer hours for low wages. There are a whole lot of people living in poverty. People don't have any health insurance, can't afford to send their kids to college. Half of our people live in paycheck to paycheck. So at the end of the day, what we have got to do to save family-based agriculture, to save rural America, is we need, I know this is a radical idea, and at the end of your long day, here it is, folks, the radical idea is that maybe, just maybe, we should have an economy and a government that works for working people, not just the billionaire class and the 1%. So saving family farms, rebuilding rural America will be very high on my administration. I can't do it alone. We need to work together, and I look forward to working with you to make that happen. Thanks so much for inviting me.